Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cara Romano, and I'm the Executive Editor of Consumer Goods Technology. I would like to welcome you all to today's web seminar, a continuing part of the Consumer Goods Web Connection series. We appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedules to join us today, and would especially like to thank Datalliance for their support in sponsoring this event. Today, we will be talking about the Vendor Managed Inventory, or VMI process, which is a key foundation for supply chain collaboration in the consumer goods world. It's a replenishment process that's honestly been in place for many years, but it's again in the spotlight because of its tremendous success and impact on shelf availability and supply chain cost. I'm pleased to introduce you to 4 speakers today who will share their perspectives on VMI and discuss best practices that have led to a winning scenario for all business partners. Our first speaker will be Laura York, the Director of Supplier Collaboration, Compliance, and Development for Walgreens. In this role, Laura is developing joint strategies for improved product availability, forecast accuracy, and inventory and cost productivity. She is working to improve supplier performance through Lean and CI initiatives, enhanced scorecard, updated supplier guidelines, better data sharing, VMI, and compliance programs. Laura joined Walgreens in 2003 as a flow analyst in logistics, subsequently serving as team manager of distribution planning and administration, manager of vendor collaboration and product flow, and most recently as director of private brand supply chain. Our second speaker will be John Negley, customer supply chain manager at SC Johnson. John has spent 23 years at SCJ in various roles, including customer service, transportation management, and as a 3PL network manager. John will be joined by Quinn Markgraf, senior supply chain analyst at SC Johnson. Quinn has been with SC Johnson for 3 years and has focused on customer service and VMI, CPFR, and supply planning. And last but certainly not least, our fourth speaker today will be Scott Kleiner, the Director of Consumer Packaged Goods for Datalliance. Scott joined Datalliance in 2009, and he is responsible for managing their vendor-managed inventory service offering to the CPG industry. Scott began his career at IBM, where he held a number of management and executive positions, primarily responsible for developing supply chain solutions focused on logistics, supply chain visibility, and asset management. As with all of our events, one of our goals is to make it as interactive as possible and to continue to get feedback from you throughout. So please notice the Q&A function on the left side below the presenter headshots. If you have any questions, please go ahead and put them there. A subset of the slides can be downloaded from the Event Resources Center in this same area, and a replay will be available on our website from many platforms, including smartphones and tablets. So with that, I'd like to thank you all again for attending, and let's get going. So Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Cara, and thank you to everyone who has joined us today. I'm looking forward to sharing some information with you, and hopefully this will be a meaningful presentation for all of you. So I'm going to start today by giving you just a quick glance of Walgreens and how we've changed in the last few years. Then I'll cover our supply chain strategy, and then we'll really move into the meat of my portion of this presentation to talk about Walgreens VMI and then our kind of best-in-class collaboration recommendations. So first, let me just share a little bit about Walgreens. As most of you know, probably Walgreens is part of the new Retail Pharmacy USA division of Walgreens Boots Alliance, or WBA. And at the global level, WBA has a presence in over 25 countries, and we employ over 370,000 people across the globe. WBA now is the largest retail pharmacy, health, and daily living destination in the U.S. and in Europe. And we're very proud to be the world's largest purchaser of prescription drugs and many other health and well-being products. Now bringing it back to domestically speaking, Walgreens currently operates over 8,000 drugstores across the 50 United States and Puerto Rico and even the Virgin Islands now. And we have 76% of the U.S. population within 5 miles of our stores. And really, as part of WBA, Walgreens will transform our traditional drugstore by offering ultimate convenience, driving best customer loyalty, and delivering extraordinary customer and patient care. That's really what we're here to do. And while I expect some of you probably have questions about the recent announcement about Rite Aid, I don't really have any information to share other than that I know as much as you and what was announced in the press, and we'll all patiently await decisions by the FTC. As far as Walgreens' supply chain, more specifically, it is our vision to be the #1 patient and customer-driven supply chain in the world through segmentation and agility. To achieve that, we'll need to deliver extraordinary customer care to meet her needs, our primary customer, whatever, whenever, and wherever she desires. This requires that we have a relentless focus on safety, on product availability, inventory productivity, and cost productivity, which means that we are laser focused on ensuring excellent in-stock position at the optimal inventory and cost every day. As an organization, we are working to deliver these objectives for our customer through major supply chain initiatives, including a DC transformation, supply chain integration, and retail and pharmacy renewal efforts. These initiatives combine a lean Six Sigma approach to our operations and a major system overhaul for us, including centralized store ordering, warehouse management, inventory management, product lifecycle management, and more. So with that brief overview and glance at Walgreens and our supply chain transformation and vision, I'll move into more information on VMI at Walgreens. So let's start by talking about just that. VMI at Walgreens is a collaborative replenishment process between Walgreens and a supplier. In our VMI relationship, suppliers share accountability for product availability and inventory productivity, like I mentioned just a minute ago, and suppliers are responsible for replenishing to agreed upon inventory levels that we work out together. Now, historically, Walgreens really was not very open to VMI. We had limited number of suppliers, and we're just not very interested in partnering in that way. More recently, we've taken a different view as we've restructured our organization and looked at the potential benefit associated with VMI, and we now have 13 suppliers that are up and live with VMI, with some additional suppliers in testing, so kind of getting ready, and some others in consideration with our inventory management team. And as far as the future of VMI at Walgreens, we're continuing to be open-minded about partnering with our suppliers, and where it makes sense for our end customer and for the joint business partnership between us and a supplier, we will definitely consider expanding to additional VMI partnerships. As far as, why VMI, what are the benefits? The benefits will come when we do it right, and we just listed here a few of the benefits that we see associated with a VMI relationship with our suppliers. So one is reduced supply chain costs, more efficient ordering. We partnered with a supplier who went live on VMI a couple of months ago, and in the value stream mapping effort that we did prior to launching VMI, we identified over a day and a half of order processing both at Walgreens and at the supplier that we were able to eliminate or significantly reduce when shifting to VMI. So that was a big win both for the Walgreens resources and the supplier partner. We also see an improvement in our in-stock and days of supply, which are two of our key metrics that I mentioned earlier, product availability and inventory productivity. And we see that through better partnership and better collaboration, improved forecast partnership, and through aligning on the VMI process. And one of the ways that we experience that improvement in in-stock and days of supply is through a more consistent process and flow, which also drives our DC to store service level improvement. That essentially means that we're better able to fulfill store orders every day than we may have been in the past. And finally, enhanced collaboration. And you'll hear me talk about this throughout my remaining slides. VMI is a great process and a great partnership when there is existing collaboration. And at Walgreens, VMI is really based on collaboration. That is the true foundation of VMI at Walgreens. So we only think that VMI can enhance and improve the relationship and collaboration, but we won't do VMI without that foundation to begin with. When done right, though, collaboration will get even better. So let's talk about some of the basic supplier requirements for VMI. This is a bit of a list. I'll run through it and kind of explain some of it to you. But in order to even be considered for approval on VMI, it's critical, like I just mentioned, that our suppliers are active collaboration partners prior to considering VMI. Without that great collaboration, VMI cannot be successful. As far as other requirements, a supplier must be capable of receiving and transmitting the necessary EDI feeds, and we listed some of them here. The 852, the 830, the 855, and 870 are the key transactions that need to be processed between Walgreens and a VMI partner. It's critical that our supplier partners provide a replenishment tool for managing VMI. So today, Walgreens does not have the capability of allowing suppliers into our systems to do the ordering. So we've had our VMI partners select Datalliance, among a couple of others, to run their replenishment ordering for VMI with us. So that is a requirement for VMI suppliers at Walgreens. It's critical that our suppliers provide at least one dedicated VMI analyst and a trained backup for vacations or sick time or things like that. We certainly welcome more than those two, but it's a requirement that we have one truly dedicated to Walgreens, so not ordering for Walgreens and other retailers, but truly dedicated to Walgreens, and then a backup who is also trained in our process and metrics and collaborative VMI partnership. We ask our VMI partners to provide weekly performance scorecards and updates to us, and to understand how to use our applications in SupplierNet and where to find the data that will help them make good ordering decisions in conjunction with the partnership and collaboration. And then we do ask all of our VMI partners to sign a contract. It's just a 1 or 2 page document that kind of goes through the partnership, so that's a requirement. As far as that deals note, that specifically refers to suppliers that have funding deals set up with Walgreens. There's just a slight tweak that needs to be made if you shift over from Walgreens EDI ordering to VMI. So those are some of the basic requirements. Next, we'll talk about the process for shifting to VMI. So typically, a supplier will express interest in VMI, or our inventory management team will identify you as a supplier who we'd like to consider VMI. The first step in the process is for suppliers to fill out a prospective VMI survey and share that with our inventory management team. The survey includes questions about things like why do you want to do VMI? Are you capable of trading the EDI transactions? What success have you seen with other retailers in the past? How many other VMI partners do you have today, et cetera? So those are just a few of the questions. It's a 1-page document that kind of gets the conversation started. Assuming that the inventory management team here approves moving forward with VMI, then we'll go into kind of the onboarding process. Next step is making sure that we have all of the EDI mapping set up properly. So in the case of a supplier that's working with Datalliance, that will typically be a conversation with our Walgreens EDI team and the Datalliance team and the supplier team. And they get the mapping set up and do some testing to make sure that we can properly transmit orders and data back and forth. We also require suppliers to do an item certification process, and this really points to making sure that once we begin the active VMI ordering, that we are not placing orders for discontinued items or items that Walgreens does not carry or that may have been set up in error. So that can be a brief process, but it's something that we require to make sure we have a clean setup before we go live. And then finally, once we have that initial setup and we have the contract signed, we make sure that Walgreens and our supplier partners align on, the key metrics and goals, success measures of VMI, and make sure that we're going to maintain and manage those throughout the process. And then finally, we typically onboard 1 or 2 DCs to start, and after those go well for a week or a couple of weeks, then we'll continue the onboarding process for our remaining DCs, and that's usually at the discretion of the inventory team and the supplier, so that will vary depending on the case. And then once we're fully onboarded with all DCs, we essentially expect the continuing collaboration and scorecarding to make sure that we are meeting or exceeding the metrics and goals that we initially set out to achieve. So I know that I've mentioned collaboration a couple of times throughout this talk so far, and I wanted to pause now that I've shared a little bit about what suppliers need to do VMI and the basic process. I just wanted to pause here to share a little bit about what we consider to be best-in-class collaboration. So I'm not going to step through every single item on here, but I wanted to share this information with you to show that we've really looked at a handful of best-in-class collaboration behaviors related to our key supply chain outcomes. So we have product availability, inventory productivity, and our collaborative relationship, which, like I said, is critical to supplier collaboration and VMI. And I'll just share with you a couple of highlights on here. So one being subscribe store in stock. That's the SSIS that you see at the top. It is critical and imperative that our supplier partners on VMI monitor these metrics daily and weekly and really focus on providing actionable recommendations around exceptions. Another example of really a great way to partner with us and something that we see as best in class is when our suppliers engage with us on conversations about ordering parameters, especially in a VMI setup, making sure that our suppliers are really paying attention to any anomalies or exceptions that don't make sense from how our stores are performing in sales, and identifying opportunities to adjust store ordering parameters or distribution center ordering parameters can really be game-changing in the collaborative relationship. And of course, I can't talk about collaboration without mentioning resources. I know I mentioned it earlier. We really harp on the fact that having a dedicated supply chain resource for Walgreens is really critical to collaboration success, particularly in a VMI relationship where we would expect a VMI-specific analyst, if not another, just collaboration partner analyst. So again, I didn't step through every item on here, but hopefully you've had a chance to glance through them, and you'll see that these are just some of the behaviors and expectations we have for best-in-class supplier collaboration. Finally, I just want to talk a little bit about some things to avoid when it comes to VMI, and then I'll close with a few things about best practices, not only specific to collaboration, but really specific to VMI. So as far as things to avoid, I mentioned earlier that we have a handful of required EDI data feeds, and it's really critical that our suppliers working in VMI actually use these feeds. We're sending this important data, and it's important that our suppliers work with partners like Datalliance to make sure that they're taking in the feeds and using them properly. And Datalliance has a handful of our VMI suppliers today and are very experienced with making sure that we take in that data and use it properly. Another kind of watch out would be not monitoring or inconsistent monitoring of our key metrics. So like I've said, to be successful with VMI and to partner with us, making sure that you're monitoring our key metrics and working together with us to achieve our goals will be paramount. And if there's an inconsistency or infrequent monitoring of those metrics, that could lead to bad things with VMI. It's very important now that a supplier is taking on the ordering that we maintain consistent planning, especially around seasonal buys. So if there's inconsistencies or lack of planning around seasonal, that could be a challenge with VMI. Other watch-outs and things to avoid would be not actually executing on the plan that we've defined. So because inventory productivity is important to Walgreens, it's necessary to make sure that once we align on plans for inventory deployment, that we actually then execute them. If a problem arises and a supplier is not communicating with us, again, that would be a big watch out. We always talk here internally about you don't get points for waiting in supply chain, so it's very critical to make sure we're communicating early and often. Lack of collaboration on some of those ordering and inventory parameters that I talked about could be a watch out and could lead to potential negative impacts of VMI. And certainly just a lack of collaboration in general could be a challenge. And really inconsistent use of our scorecards. So like I mentioned with one of our requirements and process is that suppliers are regularly updating and monitoring the metrics. So if we don't see that regular cadence, there's another watch out that we want to stay away from. But I didn't want to end my portion of this talk on the negative. So let's take a look quick at some of the best practices and things that will ensure and guarantee a successful and positive VMI relationship with Walgreens. So in some of these you'll see will be, the opposite of ones we just talked about, but that ongoing optimization and management of replenishment settings, that refers to our store ordering and DC ordering parameters. Typically, if you're looking at our metrics like in stock in the stores, you'll be able to identify where there may be opportunities to tweak our settings. And digging into the data with an analytical mind in that way is very valuable and will definitely result in success with VMI. That also kind of points to the second point here, that really digging in, especially when we have things like hurricanes or other natural disasters or resets or things that are seasonal or other changes, being aware of those and really making recommendations to the team up front to tweak our replenishment model or plan a little bit differently can go a long way in our VMI relationship. We do ask suppliers to limit back orders and go to really a fill and kill type relationship. We've seen great success with that in our VMI partnership, so that's considered a best practice. Also, we talk a lot about maintaining our in-stock, but limiting our excess and obsolete inventory is really critical. So when our supplier partners focus on putting the right inventory in the right place instead of making full truckloads and shipping efficiently, we tend to have better success, and that's considered another best-in-class practice for VMI. And then these last two should come as no surprise because I think I've mentioned them a handful of times already. But making sure that we have trained, qualified analysts to run the VMI relationship from the supplier side and that backup staff as well. And having the capability for those resources to partner with other analytical resources within the supplier only helps the relationship and helps the success of VMI and really the success of increasing sales and driving the business together. And finally, like I said, it wouldn't be me talking if I didn't mention collaboration a few more times. So it is really just an absolute best practice and is critical to maintain strong collaboration between the supplier team that's just doing the forecast collaboration and the VMI team. And you'll notice that I'm talking about two teams within a supplier here. So again, the more resources, the more collaboration, the better for us. So with that, hopefully I've given you a bit of an insight into what at least one retailer, Walgreens, views as important about VMI and how we can improve the collaborative relationship through VMI. So with that, I will hand it back to you, Kara.
Great. Thank you, Laura. Thank you for your openness. I thank you for being one of the cheerleaders for collaboration in the industry because, as you guys have found, it's definitely a win-win for both trading partners. So thank you. There's a whole bunch of questions coming in. I'm going to save most of them for the end. But just real quickly, there's a lot of companies on the phone from a lot of different kinds of, who sell a lot of different product categories. So curious, which categories are appropriate for VMI? Are there certain product types that work better than others?
So that's a good question. At Walgreens, there really isn't, we don't have good or bad categories that we consider. Our current VMI partners, so across those suppliers that do VMI with us today, they actually span many, many categories across all of our major business units. So we have suppliers in health and wellness over the counter, in our competitive convenience or consumables categories and in beauty personal care. So we really, it spans all of the categories, and I wouldn't say there are any particularly good or bad ones to consider. However, I would just say that, you know, the steps that I talked about in terms of the process and onboarding to get alignment with inventory management and make sure that VMI is right for your specific items and business is still necessary to move forward. But yeah, we don't scrutinize one category over another.
Okay, so the things that you talked about, the collaborative mindset, all the requirements that you talked about, that's more important than what the specific product is. Perfect.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it's about the business result and the collaborative relationship, and that kind of would outweigh any particular category.
Okay, great. Okay, we're going to bring you back in at the end for some more questions, but now I want to transition over to one of those trading partners. I want to bring in SC Johnson. And John and Quinn. John, I'll hand the floor over to you for your some best practice discussion from you guys.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kara. And thanks, everybody, for joining. Again, my name is John Nagley. I'm Customer Service and Supply Chain Manager and with SC Johnson. I'm first going to give you a brief introduction to our company, and then prior to turning it over to Quinn, we'll then give you a history of our VMI program. SC Johnson, as you can see, is a family company, and it was founded in 1886 by Samuel Curtis Johnson. In 1886, it was a company that was unique because it came out as a flooring company. In 1988, Samuel Curtis Johnson developed his first paste wax to help consumers to perfect their homes and protect their floors. Since then, we have grown through 5 generations, and today the company is led by Fisk Johnson. 5 generation of Johnsons. On this slide, we show a sampling of our brands that we offer to consumers today, with some of the more popular ones of Glade, Pledge, Ziploc, Windex, Raid, and scrubbing bowls. Both Quinn's and my role with SC Johnson is we work with Walgreens Direct. I am the Customer Supply Chain Manager. I oversee the end-to-end process from order to cash. Also work with customer collaboration and continuous improvement on supply chain processes. Quinn, in his supply chain analyst role, is responsible and accountable for order to delivery management. He oversees scorecarding that Laura had talked about earlier, and he is also responsible for CPFR work. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Quinn to go through the history of VMI.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. SC Johnson has been supporting VMI for many years, and we've progressively grown our customer base while doing so. Over the years, we've worked with a variety of in-house and customer-based systems, including SAP and JDA. In 2012, SC Johnson made a corporate decision to implement Datalliance, and this was going to serve as our in-house program for VMI management. We were at a crossroads with the support for our version of SAP, and that motivated us to switch to Datalliance. Currently, SC Johnson utilizes VMI with several of our customers throughout North America. It's being supported in all channels, including grocery, drug, mass, and dollar. Our VMI program is managed by the Customer Supply Chain Group at SC Johnson. SCJ continues to support VMI relationships because of the many benefits we receive as a supplier. It enables us to increase the collaboration we have with our customers and internal partners. VMI also provides higher visibility on promotions, which allows us to execute our promotional strategies more effectively. In addition, our company is able to take advantage of lower transportation and inventory handling costs. VMI also creates better demand visibility for turn and promotional volumes. This creates benefits with our internal forecasting and product supply teams. And lastly, SCJ is able to deliver improved inventory metrics for our customers because of the knowledge we have about our own products. This is especially true with our seasonal items and our ability to manage them from the start of the season all the way to the end. With VMI, SCJ has been able to strengthen the relationships with our partners like Walgreens. We are able to develop better processes, execute promotions successfully, and meet the goals set by both organizations. With Walgreens in particular, we've seen drastic improvements in subscribed store in-stock and inventory metrics. With VMI, we have identified two major benefits with Walgreens. The first benefit is our ability to manage our seasonal businesses, and the second one is our promotional execution. Starting with our seasonal business, VMI allows us to manage our inventory levels more closely to mitigate overstocks at the end of the season. With VMI and Datalliance, we are also able to proactively plan ahead for the upcoming seasons. With the data history provided in DA, we are able to identify trends and plan accordingly. In addition, we are able to reduce our days of supply and react more efficiently when responding to spikes in demand. In regards to promotions, Datalliance allows for balanced shipments. SCJ no longer front-loads inventory at Walgreens for upcoming promotions. With improved promotional execution, we eliminate pressure points at both ends of the supply chain. Over the past several years, the partnership between SCJ and Datalliance has been excellent. From day one, we've reaped multiple benefits by using DA. We strongly believe that Datalliance provides our VMI planners with better control over forecasting. It also provides our planners with much greater visibility to our customers' inventory. This has translated into improved inventory metrics for our customers like Walgreens and SC Johnson. We've also been extremely impressed with the support that Datalliance has provided to us from the initial go-live period through today. DA has been there to answer our questions, and they provided enhancements driven by SCJ's recommendations. It has been a true partnership. And with that, I want to thank you for listening about the history with VMI at SCJ, and I'm going to hand it back to Kara.
Great. Thank you, Quinn. Thank you, John, also. Okay, so now I want to bring Scott Kleinert from Datalliance into the conversation. We've heard from two of your marquee customers. They've used the terms partnership and collaboration over and over again. They're both happy with the VMI process, with the results, with the benefits. So I want to turn it over to you to hear a little bit more about the platform and really about what you're seeing with VMI out there. Scott, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kara. Let me do this. I'll take a few minutes to provide an overview of Datalliance and our service offering, as well as provide an update on our set of VMI solutions. First, I want to talk a little bit about Datalliance. We're a company that was established over 20 years ago. We're headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, with our European headquarters in Brussels, Belgium, to support our expansion of VMI in Europe. Somewhat unique in the industry, we're a company completely devoted to VMI and have been delivering a cloud-based software as a service, or SaaS, VMI offering for over 15 years. The industries we support include industrial sector companies represented by companies in electrical, plumbing, automotive industry, power transmission industry, and of course some consumer goods. The volumes depicted on the slide indicate the number of items and locations we manage on a daily basis and are representative of the 100-plus customers who subscribe to our service. I mentioned that we are a cloud-based VMI service offering, and this slide really describes the VMI process that we support. Distributor represented on the left, or retailer on the left, supplier, manufacturer on the right, with Datalliance in the middle. The process begins when product activity information or an inventory report with item demand and inventory information, typically in an EDI 852 document, is created by the distributor or the retailer. In the case of Walgreens, they create an 852 document, product activity, but they also utilize an 830 EDI transaction to provide promotional information. This data is delivered to a hosted Datalliance VMI application where it is processed and available to the supplier. The supplier logs onto Datalliance via an internet browser to review the order recommendations and can go as deep into the application as required to better understand the logic behind the order. Once the supplier, someone like SC Johnson, has launched an order, then it becomes Datalliance's responsibility to send an electronic purchase order to the supplier and then optionally send a PO acknowledgement to the retailer, someone like Walgreens. In addition to SC Johnson, I wanted to provide a sampling of the consumer goods companies that are utilizing our service. This group of companies really do range in size, the product lines that they represent, their headquarter locations. You got several that are headquartered in Europe, as well as VMI experience. Several of these companies you may know have 20-plus years of VMI experience. But on the opposite side of that, there are 3 companies on that list that were brand new to VMI when they came to Datalliance, showing growth in VMI. I also wanted to provide a glimpse of some of the consumer goods retailers who participate with Datalliance in support of the VMI initiatives of their suppliers. For suppliers participating in this webcast, you've probably seen many of your customers here, including Walgreens. I'll also mention that although most of the companies here, the retailers here, are DC-based replenishment, there are a good number where the VMI process goes all the way to the store. Some examples of that are like Costco or BJ's, Sports Authority, and Toys R Us. Datalliance provides support for multiple VMI alternatives. The first listed here is characterized as traditional VMI, a supplier's DC to a retailer DC, or a supplier manufacturing location plant to a retailer DC. Next, we have an option for suppliers to join orders together, optimize those orders in a shipment, to be multi-stopped to locations of a single retailer or across multiple retail banners. Third, the ability to take store-level data, create store-level orders, and ship to a retailer depot location to cross-dock those store-level orders down to the stores. And then finally, we have an interface in our VMI application that can replenish all the way down to the store, respecting the maximum parameters set by the store, as well as store assortments. I think the key in any of these scenarios is for the suppliers and retailers to use whatever demand signal is best for each situation, and then coordinate that with whatever route to market is most efficient for both of them. We also have some replenishment activities underway with our customers that begin to blur the definition of vendor managed. And let me give you some examples of that. We have situations where the CPG company has engaged their distributors to utilize Datalliance to create orders for them. So the distributor produces the product activity information and is also the user of the system to create the orders. And this has resulted, for this particular CPG company, resulted in more efficient orders from these distributors. Next, and marking possibly a new level of VMI sophistication, where in this case we are receiving both DC-level data for a retailer or from a retailer, as well as store-level data. The replenishment decision, in this case it's going to be an order to the retailer's DC, is influenced by both the DC data and the store demand and inventory information. And this is resulting in greater VMI order accuracy. And finally, we have suppliers working with us to utilize VMI as a means to combine their company's products in a single shipment. The suppliers' ship-from locations are in close proximity, and the ship-to location is the same since we're going to the same retailer. Along that same vein, we're working with a company that is a third-party warehousing group using VMI to combine multiple LTL shipments into a single shipment. In both of those cases, it results in the reduction of the number of trucks on the road and reducing transportation costs. That's a quick overview of Datalliance, the VMI solution sets that we offer. I thank you all for your attention, and back to you, Kara.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Just one quick follow-up question. You mentioned Europe a few times. So what countries are you guys supporting today, and is VMI active in Europe right now?
VMI, I'd start with that one. VMI active and growing in Europe. And the countries that we support, that we have a number of locations represent Benelux, France, Italy, Switzerland, Germany, Iberia, Greece, Austria, Finland, all included. And maybe more important are, you know, some of the retailers that we're working with that span Europe, like Carrefour, Delhaize, Metro, Auchan. But, Kara, to your question specifically, active and growing.
Good. Okay, so I want to bring Laura back into the conversation also here because there's a lot of questions that have been coming in, and I'm sure I have a few questions that I want to ask also. Laura, I want to start with you, though. I want to come back to that word collaboration that I think everybody used. So curious about the level of collaboration that you expect with your VMI suppliers. So you mentioned it a few times, but what really are you looking for? For example, do you review all the orders before they can be placed? How hands-on is it?
So that's a great question. So when I talk about a high level of collaboration, prior to VMI, we expect that there's a regular cadence. Maybe that's once a week for a scheduled call, but maybe multiple times a week if other urgent matters come up. But a regular cadence of a once-a-week type of collaboration where we're talking about the exceptions around forecasts and orders and you know, new items and other special instances would be sort of the basic collaboration I'm referring to. But when we talk about shifting to VMI, I'm not necessarily suggesting that we need to talk more often, but we want to make sure that the collaboration is really robust and that we're really talking about the right things to make sure that we're placing good orders and managing the inventory well. However, after we get the initial ramp-up done and get through that initial onboarding, we do not review every order. So when I talk about collaboration, I really want to emphasize the importance of trust. And part of the decision to shift to VMI and then going through the onboarding process is about making sure we've got that relationship and we've got that trust. And once we do the initial setup and maybe do a couple of side-by-side orders, then we absolutely do not review every single order. You know, we work up front to get the parameters right, and then we trust the supplier to place orders that are aligned to our forecasts, to our plans, to our customers' needs, and to our aligned metrics. So, yeah, we definitely want a regular cadence of consistent collaboration, but we are not babysitting.
Who at the supplier organization, so at SCJ we heard from customer service, who within the supplier organization is typically your contact? Who are you having those conversations with?
So in terms of the weekly and the regular cadence of collaboration between Walgreens and the supplier, on the Walgreens side, it's our demand and supply planners, and on the supplier side, it's primarily that VMI analyst, but also potentially a CPFR analyst. And the differentiation between those two is that the VMI analyst is really, they're working with and working in the Datalliance tool. They are managing the orders. They are doing kind of the order processing work and really analyzing the orders, whereas that CPFR analyst is looking at our forecasts, and then together they will align on, you know, what inventory do we need, how do we want to deploy it, and what are we doing to manage to the metrics that we've aligned on. And then those two, the VMI and CPFR analysts within the supplier, will partner with, like I said, our demand and supply planner roles at Walgreens to really round out the conversation and potentially bring in our category managers or someone from merchandising occasionally when it's necessary.
Okay. Scott, who usually initiates these relationships? Do you have suppliers come to you to say, hey, you know, I'd like to enter in a VMI relationship with a specific retailer that I know is doing this? Is it the retailer that gets involved first and the supplier is signed up? How does this usually work?
You know, Kara, it's really a mixture of both. As an example, you know, when you look at Walgreens and what Laura was describing as where Walgreens used to be and where they are now, being a little more aggressive in their VMI initiative, there are times where Walgreens will reach out to one of their suppliers to get going, and in part of that conversation, that may lead to a conversation with Datalliance, but it's really Walgreens' initiative. And then we've got those that either are active in VMI today or new to VMI that contact us directly. So I'd say it's about 50-50.
Laura, so if there's a supplier on the phone who wants to approach Walgreens to set up a VMI relationship, what should they do?
So that is a great question. There are a couple of options. One option would be to contact me directly. So if you see my name written on the slides, and let me see if my email address is basically laura.york@walgreens.com, pretty easy. So you can certainly reach out to me and ask for more information. We have a VMI manual that we can share and that prospective vendor survey that I talked about, and it really walks through the steps that I stepped through today and the requirements. However, if you're trying to decide, you know, should we take that step, should we really look into it in that level of detail and kind of try to go after it, you can certainly always reach out to your demand planner, supply planner, the manager or director of inventory over the area or category that you do business with, and really talk to them about what you think makes sense for the business and make sure you're aligned on the needs. Certainly come to me first and I can connect you with them as well, or you can start with them and come to me once you've had the conversation already.
Thanks. Scott, I want to kind of step back and take a look at the bigger picture here. There really seems to be a resurgence in VMI. You work with a lot of the big consumer goods suppliers, a lot of the big retailers. What do you think is driving that reinvigorated view on VMI?
You know, you mentioned it in the outset. You said, look, VMI has been around a long time, and it has. And there are times where it's considered that, like maybe that's potentially old news, but that's not what we see from our perspective. I'd say in the last 18 months, about half of our new consumer goods companies are brand new to VMI, the other half being those that may have transitioned from an existing VMI tool. And the reasons seem to be fairly consistent. I thought SC Johnson did a good job of describing it, as did Laura. That they're looking for ways to leverage VMI to improve service levels, to help reduce out of stocks. They're looking at, and I'm repeating Laura, but greater collaboration, especially when executing promotions or a more efficient way or means of managing new item introduction. Just overall, and I like the way Laura put this, but overall they see in a VMI relationship just overall better communications. And the way Laura put it, and now we're talking about the right things. So our existing customers are growing, all of them are growing, and then we've got new customers coming on board that are brand new to VMI.
So it's not just one of those examples. It's not just one specific business driver. It's a combination of it's the out-of-stock reductions, the better new product introductions. Those are the typical business cases that you see?
It is, Kara, and it's usually for each supplier. There's one, you know, all of those things may be important, but there's typically one specific driver in their situation that's motivating them to do VMI. So there's one thing they're going after, and then there's some ancillary benefits that they're looking for as well.
We love those ancillary benefits. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, to conclude today, I want to ask both of you for some advice. Laura, you had some best practices. Scott, you touched on a few also. But for someone that's just getting started, Laura, I want to start with you. What would you recommend for a supplier that's just getting started in VMI? What's the first thing they should do?
So I think the most important thing to do once putting aside the kind of the tactical, getting the system set up and getting all the items set up there, I think it's really critical to look towards the future and say, what will success look like for this VMI relationship? So what are we trying to achieve? What problem are we trying to solve? And make sure that between you as a supplier and the retailer that you're working with, that you really lock arms and align on that purpose and set those metrics and goals so that you have a clear purpose that you're marching towards, and also make those objectives reasonable and achievable. But I think that all of the collaboration and all the different things that I stressed about what types of things to talk about and how to collaborate, if you have the right kind of North Star or, success measures or objective in place, it'll be much easier to organize yourselves and partner to get there.
It needs to be part of the culture. Great, thank you. Okay, Scott, where would you recommend someone starts?
My first start would be to pick a good partner, a good retail partner. We're talking about a consumer goods company, someone like a Walgreens, where, what Laura's defined very specifically what they're looking for out of that VMI relationship. So establishing that with a good first partner, understanding the scorecard, and then measuring against it. As consumer goods companies climb into it, if they're new, and climb into a VMI relationship, what are you measuring, how are you measuring, and how often are you measuring it to ensure that the ROI and the success that you were looking for out of VMI are taking place?
Well, thank you. You guys have all given us plenty of information to think about today, plenty of best practices to work on. Again, a subset of the slides will be available on our website, and a replay will be available on our website for many platforms. So I want to thank Datalliance for their sponsorship today. I want to thank our speakers, Laura York from Walgreens, John Negley, and Quinn Markroff from SCJ, and last but not least, Scott Kleinert from Datalliance. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.